Hi, my name is Tunji Williams. I'm the host of Black Founder Hour, and this week on the show I interview my friend Deven Hurt, who is the co-founder and CEO of PredictionStrike. PredictionStrike is a platform where traders are able to trade upon the performance value of professional athletes. It's the first of its kind type of platform, and Deven has gone on to raise more than $1 million worth of venture capital so far, and he did that all while completing his first year at Harvard Law School. Deven is a super interesting entrepreneur and a really impressive person. We talk about his childhood growing up in Long Island, his path to entrepreneurship, and the choices he's made around his career, entering law school, and his vision for the future. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope you do as well. Enjoy.
Hey, Deven, how's it going?
Good, Tunji. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. Thank you for making time for this. I appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. You're running a super fast-growing sports technology company at the same time as being a student at Harvard Law School. I think either one of those things keeps you busy 100% of the time. So appreciate the little time we can get from you. How's your day going? What are you doing? What does your average day look like? What are you doing right now?
Well, first of all, just thank you for having me. I mean, it's great to be here. Really, always happy to make the time. It's been great just to get to know you and get this going. Now, what does my day look like? It depends. At this time of year, school's wrapping up, so we're kind of getting into finals, so it's a lot more just studying. And then on the startup front, a lot of just when you're at kind of this level, so I'm the CEO, so I'm in charge of just day-to-day things. That also adds a lot of variety to it. So a lot of meetings, especially sometimes it's just like one of those weeks, meetings all the time. Also in charge of technical stuff. So a lot of technical road mapping, coding, just kind of getting that whole process going. So it's hard to have a set day. I think the only constants are really class when that was in session. I meet with Brad, my co-founder, every day. So those are the big constants. Other than that, so much is in flux, really.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, I guess we'll get more into that, and zoom into various elements of what it is you do. But I think just to give, folks listening a little bit of context, I guess, first of all, to how we came to know one another. We're new friends, though fast friends. We got connected through a mutual friend who is also a Harvard Law, graduate. I guess you're not even graduated. You're still in the midst of it. And he just spoke incredibly highly of you, just said you are an entrepreneur to watch. You're already venture backed while you're in school. And your background's just phenomenal. So he just said, we got to talk, and we talked. And I was just like, can we just stop this and do the rest on the interview? So here we are. But I want to give you an opportunity to kind of describe yourself and your background, and just for folks listening in, who is Deven Hurt? What are you about?
Well, I mean, right now, definitely about building this company. That's kind of priority number one. But kind of, my general background, just some getting to know me stuff. So I'm from Long Island, New York. I'm an only child, so just grew up in the house with the parents. Pretty much been here my entire life. After that, I went to Harvard undergrad. I studied bioengineering there. Started doing some more tech stuff, got into computer science. Just always been into sports. So I wouldn't say I set out to start a sports company or a sports startup. That being said, I did do some work for the NBA. I did go work for Nike after graduation. I did cybersecurity there for 2 years. And while I was at Nike, that's around the time we started PredictionStrike. And that's what we've been working on ever since. I ended up, going back to school for law school. And how that even came about was I applied through this program called the JDP program. So Junior Deferral Program. I was accepted the summer after my junior year. And I pretty much committed to go after I did 2 years of something. Those 2 years of something ended up going to work for Nike and starting PredictionStrike. And now we're kind of full circle. And I had traded Nike for school, and I'm building the company as well.
Huh. What made you apply for the JDP, the Junior Deferral Program? What was your thinking?
I mean, if you want to go to law school, or there's a similar program for the business school, it's great. You essentially lock in your spot ahead of time, and that's kind of that's the plan, and you kind of just have to work towards that. So that's easy, and I love that. So because I already knew, I mean, it's the certainty of it. It is just it, and there's no real loss to not. So if you don't get in, you're not blacklisted. There's nothing like that. That plenty of people, I forgot the exact percentage, but plenty of people who don't get in that first time will get it through a later, more traditional application cycle.
Gotcha. So the only real risk is the time risk, allocated to doing the application.
Yes, pretty much.
Cool. So when you went to Nike, then you first of all, I'm curious, what does cybersecurity for Nike even mean? Like Nike needs a cybersecurity force or team? Like what is it? What do you do?
So there's a whole org there of tons and tons of people. And Nike does so much in terms of they have their own internal process, of course, that there needs to be security for. So everything from making sure shoe designs stay within the company to, financial information. Nike's a publicly traded company. So if financial information gets leaked, that's an SEC violation and people actually go to jail for that. That's bad, right? And then all the way to some of the more technical infrastructure. Nike has consumer-facing websites. They don't process their own credit card information, but other people, credit cards go, you put in your credit card on the Nike website. There's just a lot of things like that they need cybersecurity for. And as a result, they have an entire organization. I'm not quite sure how old it is right now, but they felt the need at some point to stop kind of getting outsourced help and just kind of, building out of the box solutions to needing to bring it in house. And so rapidly growing organization, and you haven't seen Nike in the news, so they're doing a great job.
It's cool to see that play out at scale, because I think one of the things I think I learned from Paul Graham essay, the founder of Y Combinator, that, the constant question a startup should be asking itself as it grows, as it scales is it cheaper in English? Is it cheaper to do this in-house or to outsource it? And that's just a question you're asking yourself every single day. So it's cool that as large an organization as Nike is, it's constantly asking itself those questions on several vectors, including cybersecurity. And they clearly build out an in-house team as a response.
Without a doubt. Exactly. At some point, there is kind of that question of, right, what is more expensive? What is easier? Even just from a management perspective, how many people are turning over, things like that, especially if you go to consultants or something. That's not necessarily a career job. So there's a lot of people who it's like, they worked on your thing 2 years ago. They're at a different firm on a different team, promoted this, that, and the third, where there is not that stability and that just reliability there.
Yep. So you said that it was during that time that you and Brad kind of got together. And I've read in other accounts, I think it was in the Harvard Law Today article, I read that he said something like, man, I wish I could bet on LeBron right now. When he was talking, I think you were having a conversation about maybe money lost on the traditional stock market. And he was saying, man, I wish I could, triple my money with LeBron. You have one of those companies that's incredible because you can describe it in one sentence and actually kind of get the whole thing out. And you're an alternative stock market for professional athletes, essentially, where people can bet on the stock of athletes instead of companies. And I think it's one of the most brilliant things I've ever heard. Can you tell us more about the company and kind of the genesis?
Thank you. That is the basic idea, right? What if there was a stock market built around athletes? What if you can invest in LeBron instead of insert random stock here? And I think that's part of it, right? I'll get into kind of the formation, but just on that point quickly, everyone knows the top 20, maybe even 100 publicly traded companies or something. Everyone knows what the stock means for the top 10 to 20, right? Everyone hears about Apple stock, Amazon stock, Google stock, Tesla lately as of the last 2 years. Those are the ones that come to mind, kind of the household, just everyday stocks. If you start thinking about athletes, there's a lot more that people are talking about, especially once you start getting into any kind of sports community, whether it's just you having a fantasy team to whatever. Your fantasy team is 12, 15 players. Your friends are talking about a bunch of players. Your favorite hometown team, if it's basketball, is 15. If it's football, that's 55 guys. Like there's a lot more interest and just knowledge and conversation about that. So we kind of stumbled into the idea. Brad, my co-founder, is also just my best friend, so we talk all the time. At one point, we were talking about, yes, some money lost over the in the real stock market, and Brad just kind of like blurts out, he's like, I just wish I could put my money in LeBron. It's like, wait, why can't you. So I guess we're gonna make it, and that's what we did. So here we've been, really just fussing this out. It's still growing very rapidly. People are getting into it, which we love, but that's the heart of it. What would it feel like to put your money on LeBron? What does that mean in a way that it feels like a stock? And so that's what we've been doing.
And I guess my next question is, I guess the question you just posed, like, what are the mechanics? Like, how does it work? I see how an athlete could be in ways, and sorry, it's hard to, when you're talking about human beings, you got to be careful with the language, but it's an athlete in a way is like a company, right? Like, they're an enterprise. So I see how investing in them can accrete value for everybody. And you should be able to kind of subdivide and hold that value over time. It makes sense theoretically, but like, what are the mechanics? How do you actually make that work?
Yeah, so I mean, we kicked around a lot of ideas, and so I mean, there's some I think that come to mind, like, all right, so it should just be kind of straight up performance based. And it's like, okay, not quite. And the reason for that is simply, right, what is the impetus to invest in not LeBron, not Pat Mahomes, not Steph Curry, if it is just the best stocks go up forever? That's kind of silly. So we had to come up with something that makes sense. So we started by breaking down the real stock market. What is the real stock market? There's a lot. If we oversimplify everything, so that's also what we did. We said this needs to be as simple as possible. So let's oversimplify the real stock market and see where that gets us. There's the day-to-day trading. That's everyone kind of sees, so-and-so stock up 3%, down 2%, whatever. Okay. Boom. We can put that in a bucket. So there's day-to-day stuff we need to have. The next bucket is, there's a big thing, earnings reports. So if anyone doesn't know what those are, basically a company every quarter will file a report, and they're mandated by law to file it, that says it's their quote unquote earnings. So how much money did they spend? How much money did they make? What were they expected to make? What did they say they were going to make? What did analysts say? That, all of that. And the CEO traditionally, but the senior leadership will do a big call, and they'll kind of explain everything, talk about where they're going and all that. Okay. So we said, well, earnings reports are a huge thing because vastly oversimplified, but if a company beats on earnings, their stock price goes up. If they miss on earnings, their stock price goes down.
Yep.
So for athletes, what are earnings? We're like, well, games. So earnings are a routine check-in on how you're doing, because there's not day-to-day kind of metrics for a company, not really, unless they kind of just put them out. So, but for an athlete, the day-to-day metrics are, well, not the day-to-day, the kind of the check-in is your game. How's you actually doing that game, right? That's what matters.
Yeah.
So we said those are earnings. So essentially, if a player's going to have a projection for how they're going to perform, if they beat that projection, their share price should go up. If they miss that projection, their share price should go down. Okay, so that's one thing. Okay, cool.
Got it.
Makes sense. And the other thing is the day-to-day trading. So if more users are buying shares of an athlete, the share price goes up, and if more users are selling, it goes down. So kind of just try and hit those two buckets, make it as intuitive as possible, which has been successful so far. I think that's been very key in the feedback we've gotten. People are like, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so in the traditional stock market, the liquidity or the money that's raised in the market goes to the enterprise, right? The vehicle, the company, to produce more value. Mm-hmm. In your system, does this money that's raised, this liquidity, does it go to the athlete to incentivize them to perform better, or how does the money flow?
So the money does not flow to the athlete. Okay. We're working on actually figuring that out right now. We have some athletes in kind of the pipeline who are interested in that. So that's been a big thing we've been thinking about. But at the end of the day, we just wanted to set the market up as quick as possible. But of course, you can imagine trying to negotiate with athletes, figure out just time, the time contract costs, literally like hiring lawyers, going back and forth. I don't know if we would have launched yet, and we started this some years ago. Yeah. So it was like, let's get this up, let's get this going, and figure that out on the back end.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing any seasoned entrepreneur will tell you, is that you don't spend time perseverating and analyzing. You just do. You learn just in time, and you respond quickly to what you learn.
Pretty much. As long as you're not doing anything illegal, you can figure it out later.
Precisely. You and I talked last time, and I was curious about just kind of like the regulatory risk with this type of business, and also the opportunity that represents for you is like a fast and first mover. it's one thing to bet on your fantasy team where kind of the risk of manipulation of the game is diffuse. But when you start betting on single players who can potentially manipulate their performance or outcomes to move their prices and potentially materially benefit on that somehow, how do you think about that risk and what does it mean for your business?
Definitely. I mean, a lot of it was just figuring out the legal landscape and seeing what it looks like. So you think kind of on the spectrum of, I guess, things that we seem to touch that people ask about. There's kind of gambling. Well, it doesn't neatly fall within gambling because in the States, gambling is a binary thing. Either you win some money or you lose all your money. This is granular. This is a stock market. So not that. Daily fantasy sports, very much the same thing, but you set your lineup. So it's not that either. Okay. So now then people say, well, are you kind of flung to the other side? Are you a true investment? Well, no, there's no security. We're not taking the athletes and saying, look, you're going to make X millions of dollars over the next year, I don't know how many years. We will give you such and such percent of that. No, that's not how it works. Okay. So we really sit in the middle of these worlds. And so it is just, we are the market maker for that. And it is making sure that we do that in a way that one, sets a precedent, but two, sets an intelligent precedent. Maybe that's one, to be honest. People are going to ask us, individuals, people, regulators, everyone's going to ask us what we're doing, how we're doing it to make sure that things aren't being manipulated. It's real money. And if you think about sports, certain sports, of course, have a history of corruption. And we've seen it all over the place. Like there was that World Series that got thrown over money. Boxers were known to take a dive at one point, just stuff like that. And you're right, it is very easy to, theoretically manipulate, right? Especially if you have NBA money, you're like, they say I'm going to put up 20 points. All right, I'm going to put 10 million that I get under that, and I'm going to get 19 points tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, that seems right. That seems very easy for them to do. But a big thing there is we simply don't let people take the downside. So an athlete, of course, always has an incentive to perform better. They want to get contracts. They want to get stats. They want to get endorsements, this, that, and the third. So for us, it is that everything's about who's going to perform best. What is that upside? And so making those incentives align with what their current incentive is kind of the easiest way for us just to get around that and make some of those things start to add up.
All right. So Dev, you don't just come from nowhere, right? Like Harvard undergrad, Harvard Law School, venture-backed founder, a million other accolades, worked at Nike, worked at Google. Where do you come from? I know you said you're an only child, you're from Long Island, but can you just tell me about like your people, your family? What are your roots?
So as I mentioned, I was raised by my parents here on Long Island. My mom is a social studies teacher, so that definitely led to a big emphasis on education. And my dad's a building contractor, so strong just emphasis on education in the household. Can't complain about that. Definitely led me to getting kind of where I am in terms of school. And when it comes to tech, my dad likes electronics and stuff a little bit more than my mom, but they don't code or anything like that. It's just something I kind of fell into. Spent time playing video games, spent time playing around on computers, and then started kind of asking myself, well, how does this stuff actually work? Like a computer does. It's this magical box that does a trillion things, but how? And so I got more and more into tech and computer science. And then by the time I got to college, that's when I got actually exposed to it. And it was like, okay, this is how you learn it. This is how you start forming a career in it. And so that's kind of what that trajectory was like.
Gotcha. So, the entrepreneurship bug is also interesting to me. You mentioned your father's contractor. You caught the entrepreneurship bug. Ostensibly, while you were at Harvard College, you were a member of the Harvard College consulting group. Where does the entrepreneurship element come from? Is that just natural, or was it kind of nurtured through watching and kind of imbibing from your dad?
I think that's a big part of it. I saw that it's a thing that people do, that people can do, and that works. So that was there's definitely that. And I don't know that I went to college setting out to start my own thing. I went to college planning to go to med school. I kind of fell into it. I was really just encouraged by one of my mentors, Laura Butler, who's just amazing. At one point, I was working on a computer science project, and she just said, "Why don't you just make this a startup?" And she's like, "Well, you're in school. If it goes south, you go to class tomorrow, and if it goes well, then it goes really well." So that helped a ton. And then it was like, "Oh, okay, I can do this." I learned a lot. It was like, okay, this is cool. Honestly, the first 2-3 projects I started went nowhere, but I was like, okay, this is something I could do. This is something I like. And then by the time Brad and I kind of stumbled into this idea, we'd known a little bit about what to do, how to get it going. And so that's what we did. I think a lot of it is, I mean, you can set out and say you want to do something yourself and work for yourself. That's great. Sometimes that's a little harder, especially if what you want to do isn't established. Like if you want to be a plumber yourself or an electrician, that makes sense. A lot of people know how to do that. If you just want to start your own brand new business, that is a new idea. That's harder because obviously the idea part and validating that people want to pay for that idea is not just going to happen one day. So I mean, I got the bug. Kind of, Brad and I started this as a project for our friends, see what happens. Like if it's cool, it's cool. If it's not, we go on about our lives. But it ends up working really well, and so that just inspired us to keep pushing and turn it into something even bigger.
Wow. And I find that seems to be a common story with entrepreneurs, both the kind of starting, young kind of thing, or immediately they realize that that's kind of the proposition, is that, the earlier you start, the easier failure is and the more upside there is to carrying on after the failure.
Without a doubt. I mean,
yeah.
Just by the time you have, a family, real bills, like it's very hard to start telling your spouse or your kids you're quitting your job because this thing is going to work. And they're like, well, the bills still are due on the 1st. So I don't know. Like that, it just doesn't work.
Yeah, that's a little too real for me, considering I just had that conversation with a newborn and a wife back in December of last year.
Oh, wow.
So,
congratulations, first of all.
Thanks, man. God bless the partners and spouses of entrepreneurs that just won't quit. It only makes sense when you make it. Unfortunately, I'm just kidding. Jokes. I'm curious. Like, you seem to have everything together. You're a venture-backed founder. You're at one of the best law schools, the best law school in the country. You've had all these cool jobs. You've got great parents and a great background. What do you struggle with? What is hard? What is it something that you wake up thinking about every day that confronts you and is a challenge that keeps you busy?
It's all hard. I think people see the results, and it's easier to say like, well, this is going to, it's going to be great, right? Of course, I'm incredibly blessed with my opportunities, incredibly blessed to go to Harvard twice now. It is just, but on the way there, that's not easy. You have to get there first, right? I mean, of course, it is easier for some people. It was not easy. It was a lot of work growing up, a lot of late nights. It's still a lot of late nights, a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of not spending time doing other things that I could be doing that are probably just simply more fun, right? Nobody wants to be working till 3-4 in the morning. But you do it. You do it because you want to build something, you believe in something else. So, I mean, definitely it was a struggle on the way here. And now that we're somewhere, the struggle is what's next, right? I have a company that's venture backed, but that's the start of it. That's not the finish line. So it is finishing what we started and making sure this is the biggest company that it can possibly be. So that's a struggle. That's what keeps me up at night. That's what wakes me up first thing in the morning. That's what I think about before I go to sleep, when I wake up. What do we need to be doing for this company? Are we doing the right thing? And there's no real playbook there. It is more established say I was saying, look, I want to work at a law firm. People were like, okay, do XYZ, go talk to this person. You need to start doing these types of things. When I build a company, there's so much noise. Somehow everyone knows everything. Everyone knows your business better than you, apparently. So people are like, yeah, you got to do this. It's like, all right, first of all, turn all that off. And you have to make that decision. And I mean, you can ask other people, which is great, especially definitely have mentors, have advisors. But if someone makes that decision for you, how confident are you in it? And whether they told you to do it or not, because you did it now, you have to own it and live with it. So that is something. And that is the whole thing, right? Did I make the best decision? And none of this is perfect. None of this is really binary. There's so many granulars, right? Do I hire this person? When do I hire this person? When do we hire? How many people? At what cost? Do we advertise through this? Do we not advertise? Do we do this to the product first, second, third? None of that is very yes, no. It isn't very yes. The numbers and our metrics can tell a story, but it's hard to tell the story relative to what the other thing would have been because you simply didn't do that thing. So that's the constant struggle, and that's every entrepreneur, every business leader. I think the difference in the struggle is a lot of it falls on me, on us, and if we're wrong, then the company can blow up. It's not the same as other larger companies have more luxury just to make mistakes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're not only are you a problem solver as an entrepreneur, you by training, you're a biomedical engineer and a computer scientist. So you're like a systems thinker, instinctively in ways. What kind of systems do you come up with to manage that pressure and kind of the amorphous mission that is building a startup from nothing? Like, how do you manage yourself?
Big thing: stay focused, stay dialed in. Know what is it you're trying to do? I mean, possibly most simply, right? Are you trying to what is the core of your product, and what do you need to do to push that product further? So for us, is it adding users, increasing the amount of transactions people make? Is it those are the types of things you need to be asking yourself, and keep that as kind of your North Star and keep pushing that way. But a lot of that, as I mentioned before, it's not easy to know what's going to do that. So one of my friends, Nick, so shout out to Nick, used this phrase paralysis by analysis. So which is just, I mean, what it sounds like. You can sit there and think about everything for the next 10 years and you haven't done anything. So a lot of it is we have to make the most good or the least bad decision. And that's all you can do. You know what you know, and you're not going to know everything until it happens. So it is a lot of what I try and do, and we try and do is like, okay, look, let's get all the information out. Let's figure out where we're leaning. Are we leaning that way because numbers or a rational decision? Is it emotional? And just pick something and go with it, because you need to keep moving forward somehow. So us sitting down thinking about like something for 6 days is not. There's just so much other stuff we could have done. So that's big. Just they talk about all the time, having a bias towards action. Just start making moves, keep making moves, and it's gonna figure itself out somehow.
It's funny you talk about your friend Nick and that whole analysis by paralysis, or the other way around, rather. I had a mentor that had an analogy for me, and he said that if you want to be really effective, you should be building a sailboat as the rest of the world is building massive buildings with deep foundations, right? Mm-hmm. Because the only thing you can count on are storms, right? So all the time you spend investing, building that deep foundation, thinking that building is going to be around forever is useless. If you've got a sailboat, a beautiful, responsive, nimble sailboat that you're building, you're ready for inevitable storms, which represent change. So it's just work on building systems that are responsive to conditions instead of kind of building these castles that are going to be blown away anyhow. And that just stuck with me.
No, that's brilliant. I mean, for us at this stage, almost everything we make or build is going to get torn out, redone. Branding going to get torn apart. You can figure out like your feeling, but a lot of the brand assets, the logos, maybe even colors, the code, almost all of your code is going to get thrown out and somehow. That's just what it is. your infrastructure, like literally like your cloud infrastructure, the amount of database migrations I've had to do and like cloud infrastructure shifts like we've done is more than I ever thought I would do. And like I went into it thinking, all right, we're gonna plan for the long term. But you're simply, one, you don't have all the information in the beginning. Two, you're wrong. So it's, you do have to be that nimble, and the people who aren't willing to do that, it's going to be an uphill climb for them.
So, I mean, where did you get that comfortable with change? Is this something that you kind of learned the hard way through business, or is there something in your life that made you comfortable kind of releasing that illusion of control over things and being comfortable with kind of going with and responding effectively to what happens to you?
I think it started as a young age. My mom always used to say, was it God grant me the
this one. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
It's a serenity prayer.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
The wisdom to accept the things I cannot change, the strength to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Right. So that's what it is. It is just what can I do something about? I'm going to do something about that, and if not, then okay. Like there's no point stressing over it. That's just taking years off my life. Like my hairline's important. I can't be stressing out here. So like that. So I think that is the lead to it. And then as it got into college, just looking around at different stuff. I did go into college thinking I wanted to do something. Didn't do that thing. Got exposed to more stuff, and even along the way, just like I kind of like doing this. I kind of like doing this. Let me figure out this. I didn't intern at the same company, so it's like let me check out this. It was a lot of that, and you do all that enough. I mean, I've lived in a bunch of different cities, up and down the West Coast, East Coast cities. It's like you do that enough, and it's just like, okay, it just kind of is what it is. It's almost weirder now, just being here for this long. Because of quarantine, I'm just like, wow, I've been doing this for a while. This is different. So
yeah,
it's just something I got comfortable with, and as you found a company and think through those things, you're going to have to.
It's vital, and I think every good entrepreneur is either built that way or teaches himself over time to become that way. Just as a matter of survival.
Definitely.
I'm curious. You're positioned well to build something huge. I know that just from looking at it and just doing a little bit of reading and just first principles thinking on the matter, right? And I guess different things drive different people to build big things. And for a lot of people, it's wealth, and wealth in different forms. So I guess on the topic of wealth, not to, imply that that's what you're after necessarily, but I'm curious about what wealth means to you. Like what is wealth to you? How do you define it? And how, based upon that definition, how important is it?
Right. There's obviously the literal wealth, which is money. I think we all kind of know what that is. And then there's the more spiritual wealth. That's about that's about happiness. That's about family. That's about belonging. It's that whole Maslow's pyramid, all of that. That sum total, I think of things, and you can weight them differently. And I think I do weight them differently depending on time, just like where I am at life. And I think what most people think about when they hear about people going to these top schools, building a company, it's like, all right, they want monetary wealth. Unless you run a nonprofit, then usually that's considered more altruistic. But in general, people see you want to make money. Well, yes, kind of true. I mean, you're not going to build a company that doesn't make money, right? It simply does not. You can build the coolest thing in the world if no one cares, and literally only you care, and that's a side project. That's not a company. So don't do that. There's a lot easier ways also to make money than starting your own company. I promise you. I 100% promise you. Just like go get a good job. Go learn to code and go work at a tech company. There's a trillion ways to make good money that are more likely than a company succeeding. I promise you, and you'll have more free time to just do whatever you want. So it's not really that. I think there's a realization about like what we're building could be absolutely huge. And I think money does measure that in a large point, right? It is like, okay, there's $2 trillion worth of people invested in athletes. That means a lot, right? That's like, oh, we really built that. And I think that is the big thing for it. It's like, how can we scale? And that dollar amount represents it. And in terms of my own personal wealth, like, of course I want to have more money. Like, who doesn't? Let's not be silly. But it's not like, okay, I need to have $100 billion. I don't know what that means, what that feels like. But I mean, that's maybe a conversation for another time. But what is that whole granularity of, like, you have 10 million, okay, then you have 50 million, then you have 100, now you have a billion, now you have 10 billion. Okay, what can you do with 10 billion that you can't do with 100 billion?
Right.
Oh, sorry, what can you do with
Diminishing
100 billion?
returns.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I always say the most expensive thing you can reasonably buy is like a sports team. So I think the Cowboys are the most expensive at like $5-ish billion. If you're at home, please fact check that. But it's okay. So you can buy the Cowboys for $5 billion. Cool. Literally, what's the next thing that you could want to spend money on? That, like, what is the next most expensive thing? And nothing. So, and obviously $5 billion is an absolutely egregious sum of money. So it's like, it's not all about that. It is, but it's about building something that's large. It's about building something that's going to last, something that's as entrenched as these other large companies, of course. That's what it's about. And so hopefully, yes, that does make me some money along the way. And then I can, like, retire and, do that. But that's not what it's about. That's not the story. And if you go into it just like that, it's probably not going to work out for you, to be honest. The story can't just be you personally need to make money. If so, go learn to code or go work at a bank.
Yep. It just won't sustain you. This thing is hard.
Mm-hmm.
It struck me, you mentioned that Brad, your co-founder, is your best friend. And I find that to be a pretty good combination. I started my first business with my best friends from law school. And even though we failed at it, it was incredible. We got closer. We learned how to build business together, and we're still best friends. What does that mean to you, and what is it like working with your best friend? What are the difficulties, and what are the pleasures?
I think for us, it's been great, but as a whole, it definitely depends on your best friend. And it's not your relationship, but some people simply work together, and some people don't. It's like plenty of people have friends they would never roommate with.
Right.
Like, one of those things. And for us, it's worked out really well. And you just need to figure that out, quite simply. Those other startups we worked on together. So that gave us a taste of what it was like working together, and it's been great. We are similar enough that we see similar views of things, like enough that we can have a common vision, but different enough that we come at things from different angles and can bounce ideas off each other. And so that's been huge. I mean, also in terms of just like time, I mean, your startup you probably spend more time with your startup than your spouse at some point, like than your kids, than your dog. It's like, this is a ton of time. I mean, I talk to Brad every day from like for us to send messages to each other at like 5 a.m. is not unusual, all the way to like, it might be 5 the next morning, like depending on who's going to sleep when. Like, is an all day, everyday thing. And so you need to be able to talk to that person all day, every day, or else you're gonna have some trouble. So that has been huge. But I mean, we've been great. We spend just an enormous amount of time talking to each other. We still like both about the business, but like about just stuff. TV shows, music, sports outside of the company, just like what's going on in the leagues, just stuff. So I think that's also important. Just make sure you keep. If you were already friends, make sure you keep that personal relationship so it doesn't feel like it's just business. And if you and your co-founder want to just be business, that's 100% up to you. And so plenty of people do that. But know what your relationship is with them and know what both of you need to actually function. Different people need different things.
I want to shift gears too fast, but I do want to make sure that we get to this topic because it's front of mind for me. And if it's not front of mind for you at this point, I'm sure at some stage in your process, given how far you've already gotten, it's come up. We talked on our first chat on the phone about a prospective employee you were chatting with. I think when you asked the question, what is it about us that made you want to join? Given your credentials, you could go to Google or Apple or whatever. And I think the interviewee said, the truth is I've never had the opportunity to work for a Black CEO. And that just struck me. I mean, not because I I'm surprised by it. But I guess number one, they had the wherewithal and the I guess the courage to say that. And then number two, that is still such a rarity in the United States of America. Like, what's your take on it? We talked a little bit about it.
I mean, one, that's true. Just the fact that it's a rarity. Like, let's start there. That it is very rare. Someone, let me see if I can find this stat in the next 2 seconds while I filibuster. But someone was saying that essentially it is just so rare for there to be even just Black VC-backed founders. Here we go. So this is from Twitter, and they cited their data. I did not read the data myself. So don't quote me if this person lied, but the data is from what I've seen, it's 100% in line. So they said only 305 Black founders have been recorded to have raised over $1 million in VC money to date. So that's in the history of the United States, whenever VCs became a thing. 11,000 non-Black founders raised $131 billion in 2019 alone. So
wow.
Yeah. So that is the gap. Like last year, it was reported that something like 0.65% of VC dollars went to Black founders. The numbers are, I mean, abysmal at the end of the day. It's the only way to say it. It's an absolute embarrassment. So, I mean, I think that almost nicely sums up what it means. It means that there aren't, both in people's what they see day to day and the numbers just show there aren't opportunities for employees or prospective employees who want to work for Black founders and for Black people with ideas who want to get funding to take that idea to the next level. So, I mean, that we can obviously have a larger conversation about what it takes to close that gap and this, that, and the other, but the reality is there is an insane gap that exists. And there's been a lot of lip service over the last however long. Last year in particular, there was a lot of talk. And as kind of I mentioned, it was, again, only 0.65% of VC dollars went to Black people. So for all of that talk, what changed? I don't know. We could, if that is better, considering how much people talked about trying to do better last year, then I don't even know what the numbers would have looked like. So it's something that needs to change, something that needs to be fixed. But I mean, the only way forward is through at this point. And that's really all we can do.
You're now part of a strong tradition of Black entrepreneurs out of Harvard Law. The guy that comes to mind for me is one of my heroes, Reginald F. Lewis, first Black man to run $1 billion company out of America. And I know from reading his book and speaking with people who worked with him and knew him that he believed, although his company TLC was his number one priority, he believed deeply that he had an obligation to his people to build and to be an exemplar of what's possible when adequate resources are put behind people like him and invested in people like him, that he can create value for the entire world. How do you think about what you're doing in that context? Do you see an obligation in any way, or if not, like, what's your framing? That was his framing. What's yours for your journey?
I mean, I haven't honestly thought about it in a specific way. I think just kind of the way I try and go about things is, look, I'm going to build this into, yes, the biggest company possible, but as you kind of climb up, you can reach back and pull some people up with you. And so there is, of course, that line between, how much are you doing for other people versus yourself? Because you got to take care of you also. But it is just, when you have the chance, just help someone. It usually doesn't take too much. Like, people ask you to send an email or do something like that, or, ask you some questions. It's usually not not that much. You probably have the time. And when it is people who look like you, who have had the same problems you've had, struggles you've had, there's no point in no point in like trying to hide the ball or something on like how to get wherever, or like, or, well, I'm up here, you're not, like, why? So, I mean, at the end of the day, look, you gotta always, yes, take care of number one, get yourself together, because you can't help anybody until you can help yourself. But as long as it's within your means, always try and help people. I mean, there's a lot to be said just for being a good person. I mean, it's in today's day also, you don't get away with being a bad person. It's so easy. Like, I can think of a lot of CEOs, a lot of VCs who are just known on the internet for being a bad person. Like, you simply don't have to do that. So it is a lot, I guess, for me of just, look, I do my first, second, third priority is, yes, building this company to be the biggest thing it can be. But outside of that, always just looking for ways to give back, ways to help people, just as much as I can.
So if you weren't building the next biggest, stock exchange and just grinding, what would you be doing? Like, what would in your alternate life where you've got everything you're after already? What are you doing for fulfillment and enjoyment?
I think career-wise, I would probably just be going to law school, trying to get a job in corporate law. Probably do something a little business-focused. If I wasn't doing my own thing, I would definitely be doing something businessy, whether it's corporate law, corporate strategy, something like that. Like, really at the heart of a business. It's also just other stuff for fun. I like movies a lot. I do MMA. That's pretty fun. What else? Play my video games, just keep it chill. I think I'll keep things a lot more chill. If I wasn't trying to build a company. Building a company is a all the time job. And I think it's funny, like some founders, like their downtime for the company is like raising kids, which like raising a baby, even worse. Like, somebody, like anyone who knows literally anything knows that's about as stressful and time consuming as it gets, but it really is an all-time job. Like anytime you're on, you got to be on. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, if I wasn't doing that, I'd probably just chill a little bit more.
I'm sure you'll have plenty of time to chill eventually. You are the founder of an innovative company that's creating a stock market for professional athletes. So I would be remiss if I didn't ask you the question: if you could bet on 3 professional athletes, where would you put your money? I guess, where is your money? Because I'm sure you're eating your own dog food.
Oh yeah. I think it's funny because we look at it so like just from so many different angles, right? So 3 athletes, there's who's going to keep killing it. That's kind of one bucket. I think so. This is slightly a non-answer, but we're doing it anyway. That who's going to keep crushing it? You got your LeBrons, your Pat Mahomes, Steph Curry, even like Tom Brady apparently still lighting it up, right? Like that's kind of your safe bucket, and I think that's almost like your blue chip stocks. And then especially on football, it's like largely your quarterbacks just because they have a long career lifespan. Who's like next up is always another big question, and that's always hard to answer. I think on the NBA side, some strong rookies. Anthony Wiseman, LaMelo Ball just coming out party this year. Like really, really see that as like, all right, assuming these guys stay healthy. Zion is like 6th in points this season or something. Assuming these guys stay healthy, like they're definitely next up. Somebody on the Knicks, like the Knicks team is good. I haven't figured out who's going to really emerge out of there, but it's someone. On football, Lamar Jackson obviously lighting it up. I think this is going to be year 5 for him. Starting to seem like Baker Mayfield might be getting it together. Football is always hard with the skill position guys. I think football is an interesting challenge for us long term because career lifespans. Something like, someone had the stats up about like one of the commissioners about average amount of time spent in the league is like 2 or 3 years. Average running back career lifespan is like 5 years, and they're on the downswing by the end. It's like, so that makes that really hard. So football, I feel like a lot of people buy for like this year or 1 to 3 years. Who else has been killing it? DeAndre Hopkins, absolutely crushing it. So those are like some guys that just come to mind right now. Oh, Kyler Murray, that was another real popular stock for us. Those are some guys that come to mind right now. But I think it is a lot of where do people want to get their value? Because there's also like, all right, who's hot this week? Or like Steph Curry had like the nicest April I think I've ever seen, or the nicest, like pretty much one of the best NBA months I remember ever. Like that's a a right now to now term thing. Then there's who do I want for this season? Nikola Jokic killing it. Who I want for this year, or like this calendar year and future years. It's hard not to bet on LeBron. Like it goes back to like if you stop someone on the street and you're like, would you invest in LeBron? They're probably gonna be like, yeah. How's that work? But like, yeah. Or like go to Europe and be like, would you like to invest in Messi or Ronaldo? They're gonna be like, yeah. And they don't even know what it means. It's just like these people have become larger than life and so synonymous with their sport that like it's hard not to.
It reminds me of the line from American Gangster where I've forgotten the guy's name. Frank Lucas goes, or Denzel Washington goes, forgot was it Blue Magic? Blue Magic is a household name. It's like Pepsi Cola. People know what to expect. It's the same thing with LeBron. LeBron is a household name. He's a businessman, right? Yeah. So this just all makes sense. And good thing that because you named like 10 athletes there. I asked for 3. Good thing that people can place as many bets as they like. I know people have placed already $2 million plus, $2 million plus, $3 million plus.
So we're at like
$3.5
million right now.
That is unbelievable. I guess I got one last question before I let you wrap up. I know you're busy. It's around kind of like the cyclical nature of trading on this type of market. So, like you mentioned, we were talking about when you're busiest, and you were saying you got a little bit of downtime because the NFL is your main push. And I wonder, what do? Companies are always being traded. Stocks and companies are always being traded, except for when the markets close daily. What do you do when the NFL's down? Like what happens with stocks and people's interests? They just sit?
A little bit. They can just sit. The market's not off, and a lot of people, what trading will usually see is people getting ready either for the next season or trading based on trade news. So a lot of either someone didn't get signed, did get signed, a trade happened, and that of course just moves the market in a ton of ways. That changes up how everybody's looking at everything. So that's what we see a lot of. Like, I guess it is kind of that look ahead. Like what do we think next year's going to look like based on the information we have kind of in front of us?
Gotcha. Okay. This is already just one of my favorite interviews. I'm a big fan of this company. I am asking on camera what it takes to get in on your next round of financing. I'm sure I won't be the only one. This is going to the moon, no doubt. For folks that want to be in touch with you and just kind of want to follow your journey and partner with you, how do they follow you? How do they get in touch?
Yes, so Twitter is kind of my go-to social network. So I'm on Twitter. King Dev Hurt is my username. Also follow the company page. So we're on there so type in PredictionStrike in the search bar, you'll find us. Instagram, the same thing, PredictionStrike's there. That's the best way to keep it locked. But if you want to reach out to me personally you can hear my musings on Twitter about everything from sports to album releases to video games. But feel free to reach out, of course, about anything either you heard here, something personal. Happy to talk there. But really, just reach out to me. What else? Our contact information all over the website. Hit the contact us button if you have any questions, have anything. It'll get to me if you need something that's like, I heard Deven said this and whatever. It'll get to me. So feel free to do that as well.
Phenomenal. And we'll have relevant details in the show notes. And I can, attest to Deven's musings on Twitter. I too think that the DJ Khaled album was underwhelming.
Thank you.
Dev, thank you so much for this, man. I really appreciate the time. Really enjoyed this. I wish you all the best and continued success, man.
Thank you so much, Tunji. I appreciate this. I appreciate you and just this whole interview series is incredible. So just keep going and hopefully, we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much, man. Take care.
All right.